What's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of ChattTenn Sports. I am Trey Wynn, your host, joined by my guy, Chase Green. Obviously, Thursday night. It is a beautiful day here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Hope you're doing great wherever you might be in the world. I do want to make our audio listeners aware. If you go to our website, chattenn.com, you can find every social media, everything, YouTube, the whole 9 yards. But in case you're watching right now, this QR code in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, if you screenshot and actually hit that in your photo app, you can find our website and find everything about us, from articles, podcast links, literally everything. But Chase,
all of it.
My man, how are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing good. Pretty good. I'm going to explain here real quick. I wanted to wait till this got here. So my girlfriend is out of town, and she left yesterday morning. And since that time, I have ate fast food 3 times. I have finished our batch of brownies.
Shame.
And it's like, what happens? Like, are we just, like, as men, are we just, whenever we lose our significant others or whoever is in the home, we just fall apart in some sort of fashion. It's been great. I've enjoyed, like a little free time, but it's not a sadness thing. It's just like I don't have any structure in my life, so I'm just going to go to Chipotle.
I understand. Yeah. Obviously this week I'm kid free, so I'm just living the batch life. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to do with my hands. But Chase, we are waiting on Paul Kuharsky. Paul's going to join us if he's able to. I know he may have had some schedule conflicts, so we'll try and be flexible there. But we have a ton to talk about. Obviously, coming out of a Giants loss, I did want to talk about some things there with you, Chase, because as they do, people tend to overreact on both sides. I've heard stories from Titans fans saying that Henry's washed. There's no sense in keeping him, trade him, get picks, whatever you can. And I've also heard that the Giants locker room has a new buzz to it since they beat the old Tennessee Titans.
Ooh.
I don't know what to think. Obviously, it's still week 1. Very much premature in this to know what a team is or what their identity is going to be. I will say this, though. Having watched the game again, kind of downloaded and let's see what really happened. I think Jonathan Hutton, speaking of Paul Kuharsky, one of his Outkick 360's co-hosts, made a great mention on the Tennessee Power Hour with Chad Withrow, talking about how the Giants basically Tennessee Titans the Titans. They ran the ball really well. They stopped defense when they needed to, and they squeezed it out, obviously on a missed field goal by the Titans. But any thoughts as we kind of move on from the Giants? Obviously, we don't want to hash up too much as we prepare for the Bills on Monday night, but any thoughts as we move forward?
Really just, there's got to be improvements. The Titans just have to play better. There wasn't anything that you look at, you're like, oh, this is the, humongous glaring weakness. But I mean, the play calling was rough, but also there's just some things like Robert Woods has to get separation. Tannehill's going to have to find Burks. Tannehill's going to have to probably, I thought he played all right, not great, but all right. And he's going to have to take some more risk, I think. I think there's going to have to be a little bit less. They were just uptight. I thought they were really uptight. I thought that was a tough little day for the Titans all around in the second half. And there just has to be some cleanup and just be better in a lot of facets. I know that's simpleton, but it's just the truth, man. Just guys have to do their job a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, I will say I want to give a little shout out to F Words Pods on Twitter. Made a great stat today and got us some information about more reasons to give the Titans wide receiver Treylon Burks more snaps. It says next gen stats among receivers. Treylon Burks was second in average separation, yards after catch, expected yards after catch, third in targeting air yards, 7th in average yak above expectations, 33.7% share of teams' air yards. So Treylon did show up. Obviously, Kyle Phillips as well. Apparently, Kyle's dealing with some type of shoulder, didn't practice today.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be okay, but you know how it is with Vrabel, where he will hide and do everything possible to avoid confessing whatever injury it is. But I know as we kind of focus and move our focus towards Monday, obviously the Bills had an incredible first week. It was something just kind of as expected. They hit the ground running. The rubber was moving. And what did you think as far as Josh Allen, the Bills? Obviously, it seemed as though they picked right where they left off from that Chiefs playoff game last year that we saw just touchdown after touchdown. But how do you feel moving into Monday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo?
It's tough because you look at this as the perfect way the Titans will beat and upset the Bills. We've got them the last 2 times. It looks like that defensive front for the Buffalo Bills is going to give this Titans team a lot of trouble.
Mhm.
I know the matchup made the Titans offensive line look a lot better than it probably really is. And I'm not saying it's bad. Hopefully it's a lot better. It looks like Nicholas Petit-Frere is going to be a pretty solid option. Graded out as one of the best. I think he graded out as the best offensive tackle among rookies this last week.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of goods you can take away from that, but also very different perspective on defensive fronts. I really worry about how much pressure Von Miller's going to bring. It looks like, I mean,
Mhm.
I know last week he was probably a little pepped up after going from the Super Bowl team to the Buffalo Bills,
Mhm.
but I do think, with Ed Oliver's he's questionable this week. He's on the injury report for them too, but
Mhm.
there's going to be a lot to answer for because it's a lot better secondary. And I do not think that this front's going to get as easy as a week as they did last week with both of the Giants top tier pass rushers out last week. There's just got to be a lot to look at when it comes to those middle interiors on both sides of the ball, really. What do you think
Mhm.
is looking forward? What are you looking for is kind of scares you the most? And what do you think the Titans can attack on the Bills?
Yeah, what scares me most is Nicholas Petit-Frere. He's about to get baptized by fire, especially like we said last week. If Von Miller is going to line up against him, I'm hoping Lawan gets more Von Miller, and I would love to watch that matchup just because for Lawan's sake, I think just a good test. Obviously, last year, as he talked about post game against the Giants of last year, there was Chandler Jones, and there was evident issues that the Titans were having on in a lot of different areas, but that's the one area, and like we've talked about and we've seen before, where the offensive line gets really weak, it's going to require the Jeff Swains, who's apparently the best blocker on the team.
Yes, of course.
Don't get it, but it's one of those things that it's going to make, which I don't think anybody wants to hear. It's going to make Todd Downing get creative, and I think the only thing that he was doing last week and maybe for the last 2 years is just getting cute. I thought it was ridiculous that and Blake talked about this last week that on those third and shorts, not even giving the ball to Henry the last drive. We talked about that. So I want to see a big adjustment from Todd Downing as far as how he's running the ball. And again, the idea that Henry's washed, didn't do what he's supposed to do. It's like the guy's obviously going to be the one focus of the offense now that AJ Brown is gone. And that's why you probably saw Phillips and Burks getting the touches that they did. But I'm hoping that they can continue to spread the ball out enough where it's going to say, hey, you got to be accountable for the receivers just as much as you got to be accountable. And that comes down to Tannehill. So obviously going on the road, having to, the Bills Mafia, it's going to be an awesome night. And I'm telling you, man, if the Titans can do what the Titans have done and upset the Bills, that's a big title, or I guess a big shift of the tide, if you will, for how the AFC conversation happens. But as far as what I'm looking for, I just want to see a fire from the Titans of just these guys coming out after a disappointing loss. Maybe the Bills are riding high on that first week win, week one win. But I don't think I have any particular, matchups. I am concerned as far as secondary versus Stephon Diggs because, when Sterling Shepard is cooking guys, it's not going to be good when Stephon Diggs is lining up against the same secondary.
Yeah, especially with Fulton not practicing today. It's a worry for that Thursday slot. When they don't practice on Thursday, it gets you a little nervous. And we know what Stephon Diggs did last week. I know he's fired up. I know Jalen Ramsey adds a whole different perspective when it comes to, I'm ready to play. I'm ready to do this. I got a matchup against Jalen. I want to prove myself because Diggs, statistically took a step back last year because he wasn't the leading receiver, but he's still, in that top first or very high second tier kind of guy, or whatever, however you structure your wide receiver tiers. That's who
Right.
he's very high up there. And I think that's going to give him a little juice. But as we spoke about, I think it was on Monday's show, these guys play to their competition. The Titans just do that. And it's so frustrating, but it's just the way of the world. And it's the way that they do in Nashville. And maybe they can step it up in Buffalo. They are a pretty heavy dog in this one, so we'll see.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see what happens for sure. I know we have Paul in our green room here. I want to make sure Paul's set up and ready to go. But Blake, if you'll check with him and make sure we're square, just let me know there. But it is something for Josh Allen. I think he is obviously number one overall as far as fantasy for quarterbacks, which it's interesting to see how Mahomes and he will shift and go. But I'm intrigued to see how they're going to try and stop him. And if I'm betting on anybody, I do think, like we've said time and time again, that Mike Vrabel, I feel, is the ace in the hole for the Titans. Historically, when we can win the games, we talk about it all the time. I feel like where we've seen Quessenberry come in, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, and beat J.J. Watt, and the offensive line do pretty well and pull a win out. So, not something I'm crazy concerned about as far as certain matchups, but then there's ones where I'm legit sweating for sure. But as far as injury report, I did want to throw this out there. As far as did not practice today, Christian Fulton, Dante Hilliard, and Kyle Phillips as well. And then limited in practice was Ola, and then obviously Taylor Lewan. I'm not sure what the specifics were, but we're going to get Paul set up here. I do want to obviously give the introduction. Paul Kuharsky is an award-winning writer who's covered the NFL for over 25 years in California, Texas, and Tennessee as well. He spent years helping ESPN.com's NFL Nation grow and covering the AFC South as the Tennessee Titans as well. And he's also a popular broadcast personality in Nashville, where he co-hosted the Midday 180 with 104.5 The Zone for 9 years, and recently has helped launch Outkick 360. If you need it, I want to give the guys some applause as we pull him in here. But Chase, let's greet our man here, Paul Kuharsky. Paul, appreciate you coming in. Can you hear me okay? Are you coming through hot? Make sure you're unmuted, Paul. Make sure.
How's that? You're too.
There he is.
But you got to speak to people in their own time zone. You can't be talking.
I'm so sorry.
East Coast time. Not since I moved from Washington D.C. my last home in the Eastern time zone. So I apologize for being late.
No, my apologies. I appreciate you being flexible, man. It's good to have you. Obviously, for all those that know, I've been able to work with Paul. Chase and I were able to get up with Chad Withrow to a couple events with Midday at the time. But Paul, it's great to have you, man. Obviously, week one, for a lot of reasons, did not go the Titans' way. I did want to revisit that. What was the biggest thing? Obviously, you probably talked about it quite a bit now, but what have you walked away from last week saying this was the biggest thing, and this is what the Titans have to figure out versus the Bills this week?
Well, their ability to disappear from that game in the second half. I think, they had thorough control of the game in the first half. You've got to come away with more than 13 points in today's NFL. Odds are you're not going to maintain control for the whole way. And the team that you're controlling is going to make some sort of comeback attempt, and they left them too much room, the Giants, to make a big enough comeback attempt that 21 points was going to get it done. But the 2-point conversion there at the end, they've got to have more killer instinct. All the same issues we talk about all the time. You played to the level of the competition. They didn't show killer instinct to put them away when they could. They had some questionable calls along the way, obviously, that have been debated. I think you get too cute on 3rd and 1 there a couple of times. If I'm not mistaken, there were only 2 3rd and 1s in the whole game. So why not start your 3rd and 1s with straight handoffs to Derrick Henry?
For sure.
And see where you go from there before you start getting into Wildcat, which we've seen work in the past. Mm-hmm. And then a wide run to Chig, I think debatable call at best. But maybe you get to that after you've had some failings on 3rd and 1, or after you've run up the gut on 3rd and 1, so that the Giants are anticipating you running up the gut, and that softens some things up outside where things haven't gotten blown up inside. So
yeah.
And the defense, has some issues, giving up some big plays, and when you're giving up a giant run and a giant pass play against your best cornerback, it's going to come back to bite you.
Right.
Always.
That's where we were talking earlier as far as Stephon Diggs coming, against Christian Fulton and
And
McCreary.
Christian
Obviously.
Fulton didn't practice on Thursday,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
at least it's the first day of the week, but that doesn't bode particularly well for that.
Yeah, because
Right.
Thursday slots are a little tougher to miss, so it's a little worrisome because I know that secondary is going to have a lot to prove. This week's going to be a very different story than last week, I think, for their testament. So running game is going to be a little tougher, a little bit easier maybe than last week, but
I know I heard you guys while I was getting ready to come into the room, and I think, I understand the thinking. I think Hutton threw out a stat today. Vrabel as a dog of over 3 points. The Titans are 19-9 under him. We know they have a propensity to play to the level of their competition, which they did with the Giants. So we expect them to play much better against the Bills. They lose not a lot, but they've lost their share of games against bad opponents that they shouldn't lose. And then, on the counter side of that, they've won a decent share of games against opponents that they're not expected to win. I think people are really leaning heavily on that. Like, they're going to bounce back and beat the Bills because it's the way that they operate. Right. I would say, and I don't pick games very often, and I'm not picking this one, but I feel a lot less good about them, first off, going on the road against Buffalo. I think this Buffalo team is better than the two Buffalo teams they've beaten the last 2 years. I don't think this Titans team is as good personnel-wise. So, you can compare it to last year where they lost on opening day to Arizona, and then we all said, they're going to have a hell of a time going to Seattle and beating, Seahawks, a tough team and a tough venue. But I think this is a taller order than that was.
For sure, for sure.
Especially because I feel like that Seahawks team obviously didn't wind up being nearly as good as we probably thought they were, especially from week 2 last year to what they wound up. So yeah, it's a bigger jump. I did want to ask, I know there's been, the harp on Todd Downing this week's been brutal. Trey and I came up, we were talking this today. Do you think this is more of like a Vrabel philosophical issue more than it is maybe just a Todd Downing issue or offensive
Absolutely.
coordinator?
Mike Herndon wrote that yesterday at PK.com. Titans were a very run-heavy first down team under Matt LaFleur. They were a very run-heavy first down team under Arthur Smith, and they continue to be under Todd Downing. That's not 3 guys in a row who love to run a ton on first down by coincidence. They've got a head coach who likes to run a lot on first down. So I think this, hashtag fire Todd Downing movement is ridiculous. You've got an offensive coordinator who's doing what the head coach wants done. And you can complain all you want about it. He's not making a move with a coordinator during the season. He hasn't made a single coaching move during a single season since he's been here. He just got a contract extension, so all of these guys got more job security along with that, and they win. They've been to the playoffs for the longest stretch, I think, in franchise history. And even if they don't go to the playoffs this year, he's Vrabel is very secure in his stuff. And, so, they could easily run 19 or 18 out of 21 first downs in other games and win when the offensive line gets going better and when Derrick Henry gets going better. I think it's overly predictable. We'll talk to Todd Downing about it on Friday and see what he has to say. And, they do a good job of not being defensive about it, but also making it clear that we don't know better than they do.
Right. Yeah. And for all those listening, watching, go to paulkuharsky.com. You can check out Mike Herndon's article. And then Paul had a great article, which we can get to about Jeff Simmons in a little bit. But Paul, I want to talk about Ryan Tannehill because on the other side of the debate from Todd Downing post-divisional round last year is you're going to nix 1 or 2 guys, move on from Tannehill or Downing. Diana Rossini talking about him going to therapy and seeing a new Ryan Tannehill. Obviously, you're in-house and you're very close to the team. Demeanor-wise, obviously he looks solid on Sunday, but are you noticing a new Ryan Tannehill like it's been advertised?
No, and there isn't a new Ryan Tannehill. It's a false narrative. And you got to be aware. I like Diana, but this is a snapshot narrative of somebody passing through. Ryan Tannehill's been really good in training camps, all the training camps that he's been here. If he's a little bit more animated or a little bit more talkative, you have to keep into account that he's got 2 new tight ends. He's got Robert Woods. He's got Kyle Phillips. He's got Traylon Burks. I'm probably missing somebody here, but that's a really big share of new weapons. So he's got to be a little bit more animated during training camp in terms of talking these guys through stuff and showing them stuff. But I've watched plenty of practices during his previous years where I've watched him talk guys through the same kind of stuff. If he's been different, I think it's because he's had to do more of that kind of stuff. But I think it's really kind of searching for the stuff. He was candid about the therapy and what a big hole the Cincinnati game left in him. And I respect that he was forthright about that. I think you would hope that a dud of that magnitude would send a guy searching, feeling badly and then needing to figure out those things. I don't think we get any answer about what that did until January.
Right.
And if he can do better in those departments until January. I mean, he led them to 12 wins last year. He's led them to consecutive division crowns and multiple playoff berths. And I think this idea that he's transformed into something different than he's been heading into the season is a reach.
Yeah, and it was funny. Before you came in, we were talking about how Diana Rossini today actually tweeted about how there's a new buzz in the Giants locker room after one win against a Titans team, which I don't know if that does something for the Titans to bolster their ego or just tell you how desperate the Giants are right now.
Well, I mean, there probably is a new buzz. They got a new coach and they got a new result, and their next 3 games are pretty easy. It actually, pretty soft. I would think they'd probably at least lose one of them, but it's not inconceivable that the Giants would be 4-0. But it wouldn't make the Giants great. They'd be one of the softer 4-0s
right
that we've ever seen. But look, the backside of the NFC playoff field is going to be very weak. I asked this on Outkick 360 today. Like, would it be good for the Giants to be the 7th seed in the NFC? It's pretty much always good to get into the playoffs. But what the Giants need, they need roster help, skill, and I think you can make an argument that it would be better for them to be 8th or 9th or 10th and do better in the draft. Though I'm totally against fans rooting for draft picks, and I think if you can get in the playoffs, you get yourself in the playoffs and you take your chances in the tournament.
Yeah. Well, I did want to ask this before we go to the next topic. As far as the adjustment from the first half to the second half for the Titans, it seemed like a completely different team. I mean, you mentioned it as far as Dable, as far as their head coach now in New York. I mean, is he giving that much of an impact to adjust a team like that, where it seemed like we were going to skate to an easy, or the Titans were going to skate to an easy win, but it just dropped out. And I don't know if that was I guess to ask you, was it a Titans issue versus a Giants success, or how would you see that?
Well, I don't think the Giants did anything special. I mean, they didn't come out and make any phenomenal adjustment that was obvious. They kept doing what they were doing, which is give the ball to Saquon Barkley, who gradually did to the Titans what the Titans usually do to other teams, and busts a big one, and they stick with it. Daniel Jones, completed a lot of passes, but he took some sacks. He's a weapon as a runner, but his big pass play was a Titans mistake that we talked about with Fulton. So I think the Titans went flat and couldn't get themselves out of it. I was talking to some guys about that today, and mostly they said our thing, is to stay the course and count on things to turn, which is kind of what the Giants did. They stayed the course and things turned. I think things kind of went south for the Titans with the Wildcat 3rd and 1 that Derrick Henry dropped. Not to single out Derrick Henry, who he didn't have a great game, but a lot of guys didn't have a great game. But Titans 3 and out right out of the locker room at the beginning of the second half is where things started to go the wrong direction for them.
Yeah, that momentum kind of hit a wall, and it was kind of weird because you're seeing Saquon turn into the featured aspect of an offense on a 4th down drive. And I know this Titans pass rush is going to get a lot of credit, and they were great. They were fantastic in the first half. Jeffrey Simmons, you're getting all these cool stats. He's, the fastest sack of the week last week, but does it kind of worry you to see, I don't know if you want to call it like an over pursuit, but I mean, Saquon, don't get me wrong. I think he's super talented, but does it kind of worry you to see these feature backs as they can just really run it on a 4th down drive or on a 4th quarter drive and kind of take over?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the run defense wasn't good overall, and Simmons is part of that, but he's not the first guy I'm looking at there.
Mm-hmm.
The inside linebackers were bad. Zach Cunningham, and I'm working on something about this that I'll post tomorrow, was really bad. And Blake Bedingfield, the former scout, wrote on Monday, Cunningham was doing something that was Keith Bullock's bread and butter, where he looked to run around a blocker to get to the running back. Well, Keith was fast enough to make a living off of that.
Mm-hmm.
Cunningham was not fast enough in this game to do it, and several times he did that. Saquon squirted around the other side, and Zach had no chance. Now, I just cut up a clip of one play, Saquon's second biggest run of the day, the one where Fulton punched the ball out and it went out of bounds with about 4 minutes left in the game on what was the game-winning drive, where Cunningham kind of ran into the pulling center, and Barkley runs by him. And he doesn't make a real strong effort to get off that block and go get involved in that play at all. Looks like he kind of surrendered.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if he's going to be a finesse guy, that's one thing. If he's not going to make a 1,000% effort to get off of that and go do something, that's an issue. I imagine he got some strong words from some coaches this week, and it will play with a lot more effort in Buffalo. And if he doesn't, they've got a real problem because there's no depth at that spot. And I really look. I mean, they miss Harold Landry. Harold Landry is a much better run defender than he gets credit for. But when they've got a package down inside the red zone defensively that includes Long, Cunningham, and Dylan Cole as an extra run defender, I mean, that's a personnel problem.
Yeah.
I guess my question, Paul, because obviously offensive line, I'm anticipating Von Miller just eating on Monday night and Nicholas Petit-Frere, like, is it going to be Jeff Swaim and MPF all night on the right-hand side? But like you're saying, outside linebackers getting thinner and thinner. Steelers signing off. You'll have to tell me who it was that they took off the practice squad. But
David Anene.
Yeah, I guess my question is, obviously we're still very early in the season. I don't anticipate them making any type of move. I wanted to get your opinion on that as far as addressing those issues, or if the soft rebuild that we were looking at in the offseason is unfortunately kind of hitting us more than we want to realize.
Well, I mean, the only major loss right now is Landry, which is a killer, because Landry's replacements can't do what Landry does in terms of being versatile, in terms of rushing the pass or dropping in pass coverage, which drives people crazy, but gives them versatility with what they do at that front and defending the run, which he doesn't get the notoriety for because it's not sexy, but he's very good at that as well. And then the injuries this week, I mean, Hilliard didn't practice today. Fulton didn't practice today.
Kyle Phillips did not practice.
And Kyle Phillips didn't practice today. I mean, if Kyle Phillips can't play in this game, Racey McMath is already out, and Racey McMath is nothing special, but he's a lot more special than Cody Hollister. They're going to have trouble there. If Fulton's out, that puts a lot more on Caleb Farley, who is kind of hit or miss. They've got some depth issues at some spots that are problems. So got to be weary there. And to go to your offensive line, they got away really. They faced the Giants, even though they lost, at a really good time. because Ojulari and Thibodeau weren't available, and they're two best edge rushers. Buffalo has got a stable of rushers come in waves. So Petit Frere is going to be challenged in a way that he has not been. Lawan didn't work or worked. It was limited today. I doubt he did very much. So he's got an injury. And then Aaron Brewer is going to be challenged in a way that he wasn't against the Giants. So that offensive line question wasn't that much of a question against the Giants. It's going to be a big question against Buffalo.
For sure. And before you ask your question, I don't know if MPF with Nicholas Petit Frere, have you seen him enough?
Petit Frere. No Frere.
I think we just want to be French.
Little brother.
We are
in French. You call him little brother, call him MPF.
Okay. Educating us over here, Mr. Columbia. But I wanted to ask you, have you seen enough from him to know what he's good at or where his game lacks or how he, how they see him and how they can utilize him?
Well, any Titans offensive lineman is going to be a better run blocker than pass protector because that's what they're built around and that's where they start. And he's a better run blocker than he is a pass protector. So I would imagine he's going to get help against the kind of quality guys that Buffalo will present to come after Ryan Tannehill. And we heard Vrabel declare that Jeff Swaim is the best blocking tight end on the team. So
hang on, 6 to go there. I was going to ask you about that.
He will be used more in a straight up blocking role next to Petit Frere, I would think, in this game. And I don't know if we'll see more. I don't want to say conventional too tight, but to me, out of too tight, the Titans traditionally are targeting a tight end, and Austin Hooper was a non-factor in that game. This team does not like to force feed is strong, but the target by design guys, I don't understand that, particularly when you're dealing with some young guys that maybe don't know everything yet. And I think Traylon Burks certainly doesn't know everything yet. So, figure out how you can use Traylon Burks to maximize what he does know. And then, lean on guys who do know. And that would be Woods, who said he felt like he got good separation beyond that first pass that he caught. And Hooper, who, spent a ton of camp working with Tannehill, and I think they developed a good connection, but we didn't see any real signs of it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was looking at out of camp. Like you'd heard, and it's camp rumors. So this guy's great. This guy's going to be a speedster. Austin Hooper is going to be the revitalized new fresh tight end. You hear all that stuff coming out. So I was kind of wondering how that was going to work out week one, but
don't forget Julio.
I mean, it might not be as much as a lot of us were expecting, but I think it's certainly going to be more than it was against the Giants.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's gonna improve. Hooper is still a very solid guy. You can tell the way he moves, the way he shakes. He's going to be all right. I wanted to ask like a general conference question here. Me and Trey and I talked about it Monday. Is this AFC South the worst division in the conference, or maybe in the NFL?
Probably. I don't think the NFC South is particularly special either. I know Brady and the Bucks are a favorite team for a lot of people.
Famous Jameis.
They've got the Bucks have some issues themselves. The offensive line between Marpet's retirement and the injuries now have a lot of patchworking to do. They've got a lot of wide receiver injuries now too. I think virtually every wide receiver on their roster is banged up. I'm not a Jameis Winston guy at all. I don't understand the New Orleans hype. I mean, they could sneak in the playoffs because it's hard after 3 or 4 teams to find playoff teams in the NFC. Carolina and Atlanta are both really bad. Maybe, every bit as bad as Houston and Jacksonville. And I still, hold out a little bit of hope for Jacksonville that they come to life. If all you college football folks were right about Trevor Lawrence, then we should see something from him this year. And if we do, that could position them to be better than Davis Mills led Texans and better than Carolina or Atlanta. Conceivably, Atlanta chokes away leads like crazy. So Atlanta does well to get those leads, but then shows what they really are, and their roster is not terrific by any means. And I think Carolina's a mess.
Yeah.
And McCaffrey will get hurt, and McCaffrey was healthy in this first game, and they didn't give him the ball a ton. And
come on now, I got him on my fantasy team, Paul. Let's stop put him on that juju.
That's a bad pick because you should draft healthy guys.
I like my first 8 weeks to be awesome. Okay.
Yeah. I took Cam Akers.
6 weeks, 5 weeks.
Yeah, 6 weeks. I'm gonna be awesome. Everybody, the betting odds are gonna be shooting up for my team. But
well, Paul, you mentioned obviously the Jags, they could bounce back, and the Urban Meyer being gone. I'm curious to see what they're going to do there. But I did want to make mention of that. You did write at your site today at paulkuharsky.com as far as Jeff Simmons being a bargain for the Titans. I'm going to let you pronounce his name, but Jeff's agent was there on Sunday. Obviously, the Titans are not known for in-season deals, and you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but what do you make of, obviously, Amani Hooker's big deal, Jeff Simmons being – I'm thinking, obviously, his stock has risen quite a bit with the comparisons to AD, but what do you make of – I'm going to try it, Paul Kuharsky?
You didn't take any French. It's obvious. I don't know his name off the top of my head. I flipped over to another page here to go look at it, and, of course, my internet's being slow. I think it's a bad sign. De Roussel, I think it would be. I think it's a bad sign that, look, he hadn't met John Robinson before Sunday. I mean, you can FaceTime and Zoom and StreamYard and all of that to meet somebody and negotiate, but I'm thinking if you got somebody a caliber of Jeff Simmons, you're setting yourself a meeting and coming to town, and he didn't do that. That's kind of weak. He's only been a certified agent with the NFLPA since 2019. So and then he comes to the game and he's tweeting or Instagramming pictures of him with John Robinson and with Amy Adams Strunk. I mean, that seems like a guy who's starstruck by rubbing elbows with the people that he needs to be, pulling up his sleeves and negotiating with. I don't know. I don't picture Drew Rosenhaus, taking pictures with I don't know. Maybe he does, but it doesn't give me a good feeling about this guy and what he should have been doing between the hold in and now, and thus Jeffrey Simmons is playing for $2.2 million. Now, the Titans might not have been willing to move on it at all. I think it would have put them in dangerous territory because if they gave Jeff a deal now, they would have caved to both A.J. Brown and to Jeffrey Simmons after 3 years. And then anybody that played for them who put up a good 3 years would have had huge precedent to say, hey, you dealt A.J. and you gave Jeff a contract. I want to be traded or get a big deal. So that's a little bit dangerous. But Simmons is in line for a huge contract after this season. I don't know if this guy can handle that or produce that, but he deserves it. I don't think anybody's talking about him with AD. I think AD is Aaron Donald is a singular guy. Jeff Simmons is the top of the tier below. Got off to a fantastic start, though the run defense was poor, but he was a terror. And I expect he'll be a terror for, in most games throughout the season. And that cost him out. Salary cap's due to go up like 10 to 11%. Will Jeffrey Simmons's value, I don't know what the exact projection would have been now. Will that go up 10 to 11% this year? If it goes up, more than that, the Titans will have made a misplay. But, I think it'll be somewhat comparable.
And that change will happen this upcoming season as far as the salary
cap.
I
think that that's the projection of what the salary cap will do next year. And I think Simmons will get a deal. They usually happen during training camp, July, August. So next July, August is when I would guess, though it's conceivable it happens earlier.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any scenario where it happens during the season.
Yeah, for sure. But I wanted to make mention of it because I thought the article was great. Obviously, they're gonna squeeze all the juice out of him as they can on this deal. But it is.
You just hope he doesn't get hurt.
Exactly. But for you to make that mention of how inexperienced this guy is coming out of A.J. Brown, it sounded like A.J. went more rogue than John Robinson. But, I mean, my concern is more so for Jeff Simmons of getting the proper representation, like you're saying. If you have that big guy coming in, I mean, and it kind of like you're saying, it looks like they're bringing in this agent to see where they need to step up and where he is. But yeah,
and look, maybe he's the next great agent. You know, they all have to start somewhere and get themselves a big client and all of that. So I don't want to completely poo-poo the guy, but the first evidence we have, and I couldn't find a client list for him or anything like that, but the first evidence we have is that strikes me as negative is he didn't get himself to Nashville to meet with Robinson between the hold-in, which was the end of minicamp in June, until opening day, September 11th. There's a lot of time there. In my opinion, he should have, come in to have get to know you at the very least.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, Paul, man, we appreciate it for all those listening and watching. Outkicks 360s every day from 3 to 6 Eastern, 2 to 5 Central. Paul's there with Chad Withrow and Jonathan Hutton. Love it. PaulKuharsky.com as well. If you've not checked it out, great price, great content. Mike Herndon. Is Blake still contributing there, or is that something sweet?
Game preview ahead of the game and game review, both from scouting perspective that you're not going to get anywhere else. And Trey, but before I go, I just want to say you've done me several favors consistently behind the scene, and that is absolutely the only reason that instead of watching the Chargers right now against the Chiefs, that I'm sitting in my office talking to you. But I really appreciate the things that you've done for me, unsolicited many times. But then when I've reached out to you a couple times and asked if you could follow up on those things, you've come through for me every time. Very gracious and kind of you with no reason whatsoever. So I'm really thankful for that, and I'd be happy to join you guys whenever you ask.
Appreciate it. I mean, it is my pleasure. Obviously, you guys have since midday 180. We've been around, so appreciate the relationship. Appreciate you joining. I hope it's on a great game. Hopefully we haven't missed too much, but
hopefully
again, not. If you're watching
10-7.
10-7. Okay.
10-7 Chargers.
Chargers are going to win that game. Chargers are going to win the Super Bowl.
I was going to say,
are my team.
Okay.
Pushing the chips in. All right, Paul. Well, we appreciate it. We'll check back with you, and we hope you have a great rest of your week. Again, check out Paul and the company at midday. Excuse me, at Outkick 360 every single day, 3 to 6 Eastern, at 2 to 5 Central. And we're going to move on now, folks. Obviously, we have a ton to talk about in college football. Before we do, Chase, do you want to talk NFL? Obviously, this game's going on. Any big topics that you want to hit on before we move to college football?
I think there's a lot of week one overreaction. I think, people like the Green Bay Packers, I think they'll figure it out. I think that defense is too good. I think Minnesota, it's a weird, not a must win, but you really want to win for them because they have a chance to win that division for the first time in a while because there is an open door. Mm-hmm. It's a cracked door. I still think you have to go through Aaron Rodgers. I still think you have to go through two really good running backs and A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones and that defense, like I mentioned earlier. And so there are a lot of things with that team. No Bakhtiari, new wide receivers. It's a lot. And I think that the Packers being just terrible. I mean, they did not play great. Actually, they played pretty terrible. But I think that might have been a week one overreaction. There's a couple others that come in, and I think that there's going to be some big adjustments and a lot of just look back at all these week one losses. And as we mentioned last week or earlier on this, last year when the Titans lose to Arizona, and I mean, that was an ass whipping. Mm-hmm. That was an absolute ass whipping, but you would have never expected that Titans team to be the number one seed in the NFC.
I mean, a lot of things change for sure. And like we said, I mean, hell, the amount of good teams that lost to not so good teams, but again, it's the NFL, and every single week you got to show up and play your game. Bring in Blake Shoemaker, and our producer and contributor here at ChattTenn Sports. Blake, you got to listen in with Paul. Anything stick out? Anything that you want to flesh out with us as we move forward in our show?
I will say, visiting his website, paulkuharsky.com, you would be hard pressed to find a better value for article content, well-rounded, non-biased input. especially when you're adding talent like Mike Herndon, who has been on the show before. Really, really good. I think he hit on a lot of the points. I know that a lot of blame is being thrown on the offensive coordinator, but as Mike wrote in his article earlier this week, it seems to be a pattern. No matter who the offensive coordinator is, historically, the Titans run more on first down than any other team.
Right.
And it's always been predictable, and this year is just a little bit more predictable. But I think he hit on some good points there. But to hit on the rest of the NFL, we do have some really good matchups this weekend that are in division. I know the Colts and the Texans. That was really something that a lot of people did not see coming. But we get Colts Jaguars this weekend, so that'll be interesting to see. So Colts Jags. You've also got Bucks facing the Saints in division, and then especially after what we saw in Week 1 from the Packers are hosting the Bears. The Bears, I believe, they won their first game of the year, so it'll be interesting to see what the Bears can get done, if anything, against a pretty vulnerable Packers team from what I saw in Week 1.
Yeah. I do want to say this. As far as the Jags Colts go, the Colts have lost in Jacksonville 7 straight times. That's crazy to think about. With much better teams. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, much better teams.
That's the thing that we were saying with Paul. Like, I feel like the Jags could come awake and not be a great team, but do enough to I mean, like Blake said, I mean, the Colts to tie with the Texans.
And have to battle back.
Yeah, it's just like, and that was that weird thing. I mean, just Matt Ryan I think he threw his 600th pass or something like that, or excuse me, I don't know, but somehow it was 328, whereas 28-3, backwards or whatever, and people were comparing that. It's like, this guy's got some juju on him, but no, he's getting older. But like Paul said, I mean, Trevor Lawrence, you want to see him do something in Jacksonville, but yeah, a ton of games this weekend for the NFL. I'm pretty stoked to see it. Obviously, Monday night with the Titans. In case you're in Chattanooga, Tennessee, ChattTenn Sports and the Chattanooga Titans fans will be down at Feed Table and Tavern in Chattanooga. Go to your Facebook, and you can search Chattanooga Titans fans and get all the information there. We'll get there, 6:15, and then the game time's at 7:15. Come out early. We have a huge, beautiful reserved room for all the Chattanooga Titans fans. Bring some friends. But fellas, let's move to college football, because obviously the Vols are taking on a team that we fully anticipate for them to steamroll. We're hoping for some more of those just slinging touchdowns from the offense. Obviously, I don't know if there's particular things that we want to focus on in previewing this one. But Chase, what are you thinking as we go into the weekend against the Zips?
I mean, as we talked about Monday, is it more of a survive or just a win, kind of scenario? Did the Vols win kind of deal? Like, me and you were talking on the phone earlier. Was it more of just like the Vols just not lose? Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't more of a Pittsburgh didn't beat us or we didn't really beat them. It was just a weird survival game. Right. I thought it was a good win. I thought it was a good win overall, and to battle and not score a touchdown in the second half. Very strange for this team. Slow first quarter. This was all they did everything in the second and third quarter. I mean, they got that touchdown towards the end of the first quarter last week. That turned it around. It kind of got the spark going. They figured some things out, and that hit the over for your boy. So that was always good, and I'm going to take it again because it's just, if you're looking at it, we'll look at for some fun betting stuff here this weekend. If you want to look at Tennessee, best thing you can do is bet the first quarter for them. They have the highest scoring first quarter team maybe ever. It's going to go that way, and they're going to come out of the gate hot. They have a lot of good scripted plays, and it's going to be 14.5 is the over again. So I would take that in the first half, and then Vols minus 12.5 in the first quarter is 2. I would take that. And so that's one thing to roll into an actual scenario here. I do think the Vols do kind of want to come out hot again, get some offense going, no stagnant start. That's my big thing. That's my takeaway for them this week.
Yeah. I'm excited for them to get back where, like you're saying, I don't understand the talk of the town where if the Vols fell on a win or whatever it was. I heard a few people having that conversation. It's like, it's football. You're going to go out there, and if you squeeze the win out, wonderful. But just to say that you didn't do it, I want to see more. I want to see more good things from the offense, and I want to see guys like Jalen Hyatt and just the receiving group continue to do what they were doing. Jabari Small was running downhill. And obviously, I know we talked about it Monday a lot, but the SEC, I feel like, from Georgia and Alabama, and then where do we go from there? And a lot of folks are saying Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been conversations about Georgia. I'm just hoping that this week for the Vols is just one more step in the right direction of progressively getting better this year. And obviously, Florida, we don't really know what Florida is yet. We don't really know what Kentucky is yet, So it's a matter of just, I want to see them take good steps and not making silly mistakes, situational football mistakes, kind of like that. I want to see them making some good moves and, see what we can do against the Zips.
Yeah, stay healthy. That's the main thing for this
healthy.
team going into Florida. You might have game day. There's about 3 games that might have it the next week, but I figure Florida would have beat Kentucky. They definitely would have had it, but they might be going to this Wake game over there. But yeah, just for Tennessee, just stay healthy. Go figure some things out, get some confidence. You guys know how it is. Watch. It's like basketball. You watch the ball go in the hoop a couple times, and you're golden.
Yeah,
that's all you need to do. That's all we're doing. Just throw the ball deep. Make some cool catches. Do all the hype stuff. Be athletic.
And a night game at Neyland. I mean, it's going to be those shots and those highlights for all those players to go and put on their walls.
I mean, they're a 50-point favorite.
But in general, though, as we wrap up, I want to ask you guys, what are some games that you guys are excited for this weekend? Help me. I'm going to actually prepare my Saturday and get a game or 2 lined up. But anything sticking out for you guys as we close our show out tonight?
Penn State Auburn has some potential. I don't really expect it to be that close of a game, but 2 big name programs going against each other, and a game there should be pretty interesting to watch. Out west, you've got BYU playing at Oregon, another potential one. Yeah, it's pretty good. You got a lot of cupcakes in this particular week, and probably not any big marquee games. But as we get into week 3, and we start talking about, like you say, Florida, Tennessee, and some of the other games out there. I just think that, kind of doubling back on the Tennessee thing, Tennessee just needs to keep doing what they're doing. They're averaging, I had it in front of me just a second ago. They're averaging 46.5 points a game. That's gonna win most games, which is the best in the SEC and 14th nationally. You're also looking at scoring 30 points in 5 straight games and averaging nearly 493 yards a game. So just keep doing what you're doing. And Akron, there's absolutely no reason to slow down against Akron. Akron is coming off a 52-0 loss to Michigan State. So it's going to be a couple of bad weeks for the old Zip.
Yeah, the Zips are not going to have a good time.
Yeah, the Zips are getting zapped right now. But it's just one of those things. But no, overall, a pretty tame week of college football. Just these tune-up games. Alabama has Louisiana Monroe, Tennessee has Akron, and you just have a lot of just cupcake matchups. But it'll be interesting. Georgia's going to annihilate South Carolina. It's not going to be. That line is currently at 24.5 in favor of Georgia. So you're gonna have a bad time.
Yeah, that's one that I was like, I kind of want to see. I don't know why. I just really kind of dislike Spencer Rattler.
There's more than one reason to hate Spencer.
Yeah,
he's got a vibe about him. I'm not big on him either.
Yeah, he's got a vibe about him. And
have y'all seen the video of him? Like, it's a training camp video of him dogging out one of his receivers.
No,
it's pretty bad.
Really, I'll have to go watch that. I missed that.
Yeah.
That was one I was intrigued at, at the Gamecock Stadium. But like you mentioned, I think that Penn State Auburn one's a good one. Like, this is the 3:30 CBS game. It's Auburn's a home dog. There's some fun things that could go on there. It might be a slow game. There's a couple what was I looking at? Okay. Storyline games. How does Texas A&M handle Miami coming into Texas A&M after last week? Appalachian State goes in, beats you. Here comes Miami.
I love it.
That's gonna be that's probably the second highest ranked game. That's a 9:00 game. It's a big ESPN game. That's probably the one I'm looking forward to the most. And then Mississippi State, LSU. It's name worthy, but it's not as good worthy.
Yeah.
So those are really about it.
Yeah.
So.
Texas A&M, though, I don't know what I love about Jimbo Fisher struggling, but I'm just like, it's the same thing.
It's just right.
We talked about Brian Kelly and him being late and the whole conversation there. I know that they're not going to win, but I would love to see South Carolina at least just give the Dogs something to
I want a good game at noon.
Well, you know how Tennessee did a couple years ago with Pruitt, where the first half we were close and then they just took off in the second. Give me something, because we saw Alabama. Alabama looked human last week.
Yep.
It's a time in the game where it's like this Texas team is having their way. I don't think Georgia is human at all, because like Shane Beamer said, they've got a ton of 5-stars and they're fast and they can stop the run, but you always line them up. But guys, I'm curious to know as we close out. I know we're going to try and eventually move into some type of closing topic for our Thursday show. But I want to ask you guys this, and realistically, but you can get a little fun with it if you want to. But what are the headlines going to be for the Vols and for the Titans on Monday? And I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Y'all are going to – Titans get beat 31-14 in a gut-wrenchingly bad fashion. And especially after talking about details with Paul, inside linebacker, outside linebacker, offensive line, just to start. Obviously, if Phillips doesn't go, big concern. And then for the Vols, I think they're going to blow the Zips out, have an incredible Neyland atmosphere, and probably recruit everybody, and everyone's going to sign to go to Tennessee, all 5 stars, just because of this one game. So that's my prediction for Monday's headlines.
Tennessee Vols. Vols ready come Florida. Is this our chance to win again? This is going to be a big I'm with you. I'm with you, Blake. I think they're going to score 1 million points on Akron. They're bad.
493 yards a game so far. Is that right? Is that what you said, Blake?
Mm-hmm. Crazy. Isn't that crazy? And there's things like there is, and I'm going to be honest with you, there's a lot of things I think they can improve on. Like there's a lot. Like that. I'm like, man, Cedric Tillman had like 9 catches for 162 yards, and I was like, that's an all right game.
We're doing
there's so much volume when it comes to this Tennessee offense that you're like, yeah, but in most offenses, that's like 5 catches for 64 yards and maybe a touchdown.
Yeah,
like it's just the way it is. And so for the Titans,
and I'm sure we'll have some weeks where Tennessee, we're having these like,
yeah.
What are we saying next week?
This week's a bad headline week for Tennessee Vols.
Yeah,
Tennessee Titans. You all right for this one? Ryan Tannehill breaks Nashville's heart again.
Oh, I thought you just said that.
Ooh.
I think Tannehill is the one. I mean, and I hate to say it because I honestly, it's going to be it's because it's a headline grab, but I think it's going to be the offensive line's fault. I think he gets roasted a couple times, probably throws some picks, maybe a fumble or something like that. I think it's a bad day for Tannehill because I think that pressure is going to be coming in hot.
Strip sacks, just like Jeff Simmons did to old mayonnaise Daniel Jones.
And they're going to blame it on Tannehill because that's what you get for being a quarterback.
All the stands are going to come out. All the Mariota stands are going to be throwing shade. But yeah, as much as people could say any one of us could be homers, I think we're on the right foot to disprove that and show us to be realistic. I mean, like Paul said, I think it is typical Titans if they were to go in, but realistically, I agree with Paul saying this team is not quite traditionally as good as it has been. But Blake, tell me the headline. Can you read the future? Can you give me something to give me an idea of what I can anticipate this weekend?
I know this is going to shock you, but I think the Tennessee headline is going to be very similar to what you guys said. I think it's really going to be. I really think it's going to be something. I think they're probably going to improve their average in their scoring. They're probably going to improve that average as far as their total yardage. I could see it being a final score of, I say 58-0. That's what I'll say. 58-0.
Not 59 like the Patriots that one year. No doubt.
58-0. And I think all the headlines are going to be like, is this finally the team? Like it's all going to be about that Florida game. Like you're going to go in and all those expectations are going to be higher than they've been in a long time. And the headlines are going to be, is this the real deal? Or are we just setting ourselves up for the same old stuff? As far as the Titans, gosh, I feel like one of us has to be positive, right?
Dude, you can be the positive guy if you want.
They're not going to let us into the watch party.
Yeah.
Hey, we saw that video of you guys.
Yeah, great. We went viral for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
Maybe, since the Bills are the real deal up front, and you've got Von Miller and you've got all this pressure up front. Maybe this is the thing that forces them away from the running game a little bit. Maybe this is the breakout game for our new number one receiver. But I could see, it's either we're going to get blown out or we're going to squeak by with a win. Yeah. And I will say that because of having to change up the same old ho-hum strategy and actually air it out a little bit, I will say in a low-scoring affair, largely due to Burks, the Titans come out with a win 24-21.
Fair. I dig it.
All right. Okay.
I dig it. All right,
Okay.
boys. I'm going to try something new here. We're going to get a little exit music as we go. But, folks, in case you are new to us, ChattTenn Sports, go to chattenn.com. We got articles. We got everything you can need. But check us out. Follow us. Obviously, if you're listening, make sure to subscribe. Be kind and rate. But we hope you have a great rest of your week. Tighten up. Goes Vols. Fellas, appreciate you being here. Thanks again to Paul Kuharsky. PaulKuharsky.com. Check him out. Outkick 360 tomorrow, 2 o'clock. This is 5 o'clock Central, 3 to 6 Eastern. Appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your week. See you next time.
Peace out.